the United Nations has recognized access to water as a basic human right. The challenge of providing safe drinking water was brought to global attention and has since been discussed heavily in international environmental and developmental discussions. From these discussions, the 6th Sustainable Development Goal (SDG) was introduced to ensure available and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Despite the tremendous amount of attention paid to the provision of safe and affordable drinking water, more than 900 million people around the world still lack access to clean drinking water today. Water scarcity is predicted to be one of the biggest obstacles the world and its future generations will be facing. India is currently facing one of its most crippling crises in history. The country of 1.4 billion is experiencing widespread water scarcity with more than 75 million people without access to clean drinking water. India lags behind most of its neighbours in terms of access to safe, potable water. Good evening and welcome to ANC News. I'm Joan Ng and welcome to our special segment of the day. Today, we'll be taking a deep dive into the country running out of time. We will be exploring India's water crisis, to privatize or not to privatize. So what is privatization? Well, privatization refers to the transfer of ownership of water resources from the public to the private sector. It was believed that water privatization could be the solution to India's water problems. And in the 1990s, international organizations such as the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund pushed India into privatizing its water resources. However, since then, water privatization has come under much criticism, with many citizens claiming that it has brought more harm than good to the country. Today, we will delve into the successes and failures of water privatization in India and evaluate if privatization is truly the solution to water crisis. But before that, let us take a look at some of the key causes of water scarcity in India. Currently, India is ranked 13th most water-stressed country according to the Aqueduct Water Risk Atlas by the World Resources Institute. According to the Water Stress Index, a country is deemed to be a water-stressed region if water availability falls below 1,700 cubic meters per capita per annum and is water scarce if water availability falls below 1,000 cubic meters per capita per annum. At present, India is classified as a water-stressed region, but it is projected that India will face water scarcity by 2050. However, with an average annual rainfall of 1,170 millimeters, India is one of the wettest countries in the world. You would naturally assume that having that much natural water available would translate to India being water secure. How is it then that India is facing one of the world's worst water crises? This problem can be attributed to several factors, mainly water pollution, climate change, rising population, and the biggest contributing factor, government failure. Indian lakes and rivers face intense pollution by its people, with 70% of its water resources considered polluted and unsafe for drinking. India's water sources are polluted with both chemical and biological pollutants. India's phosphorus pollution by human activity is ranked second in the world. It is estimated that 15% of India's population contribute to polluting water sources with phosphorus. Substantial amounts of phosphorus runoff from agriculture fields and dumping of chemical waste from industries into rivers have devastated the river ecosystems. Now, many rivers in India, such as Buddha-Nula River in Ludhiana, are in a state of eutrophication, overrun by algae which render the river water unfit for consumption. Biological pollutants, such as human wastes and feces, contaminating water sources have further worsened the problem of scarcity. With less than one-third of India having access to traditional sanitation, one-third of India's population practice open defecation into bodies of water, leaving a significant amount of fresh water undrinkable. Moving on to the second factor. Climate change has altered rainfall patterns in India, delaying monsoon rains, hence causing rivers and lakes to dry out. Just last year, in 2020, India saw the longest delay of monsoon rains of 2 weeks. This has left many people who depend on rainwater in desperate need. Furthermore, India is facing an increasing number of droughts since 2015, causing water in reservoirs to deplete rapidly. As for the third reason, India's population is rising exponentially. India is presently the second most populous country in the world, just behind China. However, India is projected to overtake China by the 2030s. The rising population is creating an ever greater demand for water, thus increasing the amount of stress on water resources. Finally, the biggest factor to India's crisis is the failure of the government to manage and develop its water resources properly. Inefficient water distribution systems have led to high volumes of non-revenue water. Non-revenue water is the volume of water lost before it reaches the customers. This water is often lost because of poorly maintained leaky pipes. Water lost through pipes account for up to 3% of total water supply. Furthermore, due to poor monitoring from the government, water theft is rampant, with about 16% of water stolen from water pipes. Unmaintained, old, and leaky pipes have also allowed sewage water to leak into water pipes, making the water polluted and unsafe to drink. This problem has emerged because the Indian government has failed to separate water sewage and stormwater systems, allowing sewage water to enter freshwater systems. Poor policy making and decision making by the government have also caused issues with the water used for irrigation. The government has maintained low prices of water used for irrigation to encourage its citizens to grow water-intense crops, such as rice and sugarcane. However, keeping water prices low have led to the wasteful usage of water. Even now, India still uses flood irrigation method, which has an extremely low water efficiency. Even though the government has expressed that it has prioritized efforts to ensure the provision of clean water for its citizens, there has been little success in their programs. This could be a consequence of corruption within the government, whereby corrupt officials embezzle funds meant for improving water efficiency. Hence, the development of water efficiency programs has been hindered. Water privatization was thought to be the solution to the Indian water crisis and became increasingly prominent in India from the 1990s. However, this topic of privatization is highly contentious as there are multitudes of benefits and limitations. We are honoured to have invited Joanna, a spokesperson from Viola, one of the world's largest private water companies, to share with us some of the successes that water privatization has brought to the country. Thank you for having me here today. I'll start off first by saying that water privatization has been able to rectify problems brought by state failure. This is because privatization allows water resources to be subjected to the forces of market like supply and demand, and setting a price on water would reduce water usage and encourage water conservation. Furthermore, privatization will allow for a more efficient use of water resources owing to the company's superior expertise and capital to maintain and develop water infrastructure. Furthermore, privatization actually also alleviates the principal-agent problem. Basically, the principal-agent problem occurs when agents look after the interests of principals. Inefficiencies are inevitable due to the mismatch of the two sets of interests. This is a huge problem when governments, who are the principal, contracts firms, who are the agent, to take care of water systems. The government would want to ensure safe and affordable drinking water for everyone, but firms which have been contracted by the government would aim to make a profit. However, since the contracted firms do not make a profit and are paid the same amount by the government, there is no incentive for them to improve their performance and ensure a good water quality and enhance efficiencies. By privatizing water resources, private companies will be motivated by being able to generate profits based on their performance, and so companies will seek to continually upgrade water systems to best serve our customers. Viola has increased water efficiencies and also developed new technologies. As you have mentioned earlier, large amounts of revenue and profits have been reduced as a result of high volumes of non-revenue water. Being a largely profit-driven company, it is our goal to minimize the water lost due to theft and leakage. We have taken action to repair leaky pipes and have also installed bulk metering and monitoring measures which analyzes the leakage and survey pipelines. The results are impressive. Non-revenue water fell from 23% in 2004 to 10% in 2006. In just 2 years, we managed to decrease non-revenue water by more than 10%, and I believe that this is something that the government alone is not able to do. What's more is that we are trying to ensure that water is distributed to as many people as possible and provide 24/7 supply of water. We have successfully managed to do this in the cities of Hubli, Belgaum and Gulbarga in Karnataka. Between 2006 to 2008, we increased water supply from once every 2 to 15 days for 1 to 2 hours to 24 hours per day for 180,000 people. It was a huge success for us. Not only that, but to make sure our business remains competitive with other companies, we are always striving to develop new and more efficient technologies. Currently, we are looking into developing new water purification technologies like smart water purifiers and auto maintenance systems. These new technologies allow for real-time tracking of water quality, water consumption, and a filtration system which ensures the quality of water. My company and I strongly believe that water privatization is the solution to water crisis in India. Thank you, Joanna. Now we also have with us here today Joanne, a water justice activist, to tell us more about the dark side of water privatization. Thank you so much for having me here today. We first have to understand first that water is public good. It's essential to life, and it is not ethical to profit from water. By privatizing water resources, you are denying many of the poor and vulnerable from having access to a fundamental resource. David Harvey, a renowned geographer, characterizes the privatization of water as accumulation by dispossession. And this is a concept which argues that the enclosure of public assets by private interests for profits result in greater social inequality. And this has proven to be very true. Privatization in India has instead increased the social inequality gap through the increase in water tariffs and the urban buyers of private companies. As upgrading and maintaining new water harnessing and purification systems are very expensive, water privatization is usually accompanied by the inflation of water prices. Private companies often recover these expenses by charging a higher price to the consumer. For example, privatization of water in Nagpur has caused water tariffs to increase by up to 4 times, making water unaffordable to the poor and vulnerable. Furthermore, since private corporations are profit motivated, they will often be biased to urban areas, and this is because greater profits can be reaped from large urban centres with a larger population, and hence rural and urban poor areas often find themselves neglected by private companies. And as a result, piped water is much more accessible to the rich. 65% of the rich Indians have access to piped water, but only 2% of the poor have the same privilege. Most of the outlying urban areas depend on informal vendors such as tankers, where they charge exorbitant prices for just a small volume of water, just because they do not have access to piped water. We also see that more than 80% of rural areas do not have access to piped water, and they depend heavily on groundwater. However, groundwater is depleting fast, and women in rural villages must travel long distances to wells just to draw water for their families. Another problem that privatization of water has brought to India is the lower quality of water. Water quality regulatory boards in India do not have strong enough teeth to ensure private companies adhere to the standards for quality of water. Hence, private corporations in India will often seek to reduce costs by compromising on the quality of water. So just for example, in Kerala, Coca-Cola's careless mining of groundwater has contaminated the groundwater with high levels of chemicals such as calcium and magnesium, resulting in health problems for many of the villagers. And so I believe that it is very obvious that water must be treated as a public good, and everyone, rich or poor, should have access to clean drinking water. Thank you, Joanne. We have seen 2 very different sides of water privatization as presented by Joanna and Joanne. To consolidate the information, we now invite our final guest, Juan, an environmentalist, to evaluate if privatization is really the way to go.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Anyways, as Joanne has mentioned, water is truly a basic good of life, and everyone should have access to clean drinking water. But as what Joanna has pointed out, setting a price on water encourages the conservation of it and is very important. Furthermore, if water is solely viewed as a common good, then it will be exploited and overused as individual actors act in their own self-interests. This problem is described as the tragedy of the commons, and a possible solution to this problem is to regulate the water by privatization. However, as we've seen from the points Joanne has raised earlier, water privatization has its limitations as well, especially in ensuring water is accessible and affordable to everyone, including the poor and marginalized. Therefore, privatization of water is a very delicate subject that requires the careful and purposeful balancing of water resources. It is crucial that the public sector does not completely give up its rights to manage water policies. Pricing water correctly is an essential part of ensuring equitable use of water for everyone. Consumers are paying for the services that water companies provide, such as water harnessing, purification, distribution, and the convenience of having water 24/7 all year round. If water is priced too low, then consumers will overuse the water resources, which will lead to wastage. By pricing water accurately and consistently with its scarcity and ecological value, it allows consumers to internalize the true cost of water usage, such as the water services, as I mentioned earlier, and pollution externalities. In developed countries where consumers can afford to pay for the true cost of water, privatization and the increase in water rates are a suitable method to encourage the conservation of water. However, it is still the state's responsibility to ensure that water, which is an essential good to life, is affordable to everyone. This is especially so in developing countries where not everyone can internalize the true cost of water. And the government can ensure that water is affordable to everyone through price setting. So, for example, poorer parts of the population can receive subsidies from the government to ensure that they have enough water to live well. In addition, to encourage water conservation, the price of water can be proportionately increased with greater usage. Furthermore, the government should have control over the standards of water quality and which areas should be connected to water supplies. These regulations should be set as conditions that a private company must fulfill to have control over the water source. This should not be left to the private company decision to decide on who gets to receive what quality of water. So in this way, high water quality can be secured and equitable access of water can be provided to all people. Hence, for privatization to work, especially in India, the government should work closely with private companies to ensure safe and equitable access of water to its people. The state must have the political will to enforce strict regulations and closely monitor the actions of private corporations.
Thank you, that was very insightful. As you have heard from our distinguished speakers today, water privatization is an extremely contentious issue. As the water crisis in India becomes increasingly dire, India must take action urgently. Privatization of water seems to be here to stay, and it's unlikely that this will change in the foreseeable future. In order to reconcile the needs of the citizens and the companies, the state has to intervene and play a more prominent role in enforcing strict regulations to ensure affordable and equitable access of water for all. I am Joan reporting live from ASE News. Thank you and have a good night.